Dr. Patricia Lambino.
Join in giving her welcome.
Thank you, Laurel. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the school, I welcome you all to the NGF Conference Room of the School of Humanities. I thank the Literary and Social Studies program for holding this festival, and especially for conceptualizing this session. Fantastic title, the Literary Ongpin. It really captures your imagination, right? Before walking tours were invented, and before vlogs on YouTube of those walking tours beyond the food crawls were invented and became a thing, our two fictionists, Dr. Charlson and Mr. Robby Laurel, had already been taking their readers to their own pin. Sometimes strange, sometimes familiar own pin. So I look forward to hearing more about that place. I look forward to hearing the conversation about the Ongpin of the past and the present, a living archive for all of us to rediscover. Again, I welcome you all to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Robby. Allow me to introduce the two speakers. Dr. Charlson is a writer and professor of creative writing at the University of the Philippines. He has published 4 collections of short fiction, Men of the East and Other Stories, Woman of Amtao and Other Stories, Conversion and Other Stories, Of That Other Country We Must Now Speak and Other Stories, as well as 4 novels, namely An Embarrassment of Riches, which was awarded the Centennial Literary Prize, Banyaga, A Song of War, which won the National Book Award, Blue Angel, White Shadow, and White Lady, Black Christ. He has won several national awards for his fiction, including the Carlos Alanca Memorial Awards, the Philippine National Book Award, the Gawad Balagtas, and the Southeast Asia Right Award from Thai Royalty. He has also won the Filipino Academy for Motion Picture Award, so that's FAMAS, for Best Adapted Screenplay for Kanabat's Wife, which he wrote and co-directed. His most recent publication, Sojourner, Settler, Seer, The Complete Stories, is a collection of audio short stories and novels published by Mil Flores last year. Dr. Robby Laurel has taught English language and literature classes at UP Diliman and Ateneo. He finished his PhD in creative writing at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and both his MA Philosophy and BA English Literature here at the Ateneo. A former editor for National Midweek, he has published non-fiction narratives in newspapers and magazines, such as the Manila Chronicle, Sunday Inquirer magazine, and Newsday. His essay on national arts for literature and Vivian Gonzalez's plays in Philippine literature is included in the book Remembering NVM. His book, Philippine Cultural Disasters, Essays on an Age of Hyperconsumption, came out in 2010. His collection of short fiction, Ongpin Stories, was reprinted by Mil Flores Publishing in 2021. Friends and colleagues, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ong and Dr. Kultura.
Good afternoon. Not sure. Anyway, are we going to read or just talk?
Talk first and then reading.
Okay. So, actually, my latest novel is The Arhat Sam. It's a novel by also published by Mil Flores, and it concerns a bit the everything that's going on now, including the China, the West Philippine Sea. My collection, I call it Sojourner, Settler, Seer, because I thought sort of describes the path of maybe Chinoy writing or the presence in the country. So of course our parents and grandparents, even early, were sojourners. And so they came as sojourners, visitors, and then became settlers. And then here, I don't know, maybe that's just to make it alliteration. Yeah, I think once you stay, you settle, and then eventually the artists, the writers, and they're the seers. So that's why I called it that. And when I was young, when I was a boy, like we were almost the same age, there was very little representation of the Chinese Filipino, not only in literature but in mass media. There was not. There was a guy named Akong who would come out in Kwento Kuchero, but actually was a Filipino, although he looked very Chinese. He was a drummer named Per Delfino, who played drums for the AJC band. So they would always get him to play the Chinese, lagi siya Ming, yung Qing Dynasty outfit. And he was talking, actually he was, hindi naman siya masama. He should was a comic character. Except once, I remember I was a young boy in the election of 69, when Marcos ran against Osman. They did this sitcom on TV. And ATSAB, of course, because this was the ally of Marcos. And then they would have this skit, 6 o'clock, may tatlong Pilipino ata, singing. Sila yung chorus eh. And they would sing about Ferdy Makabayan, of course. And then, ang kalaban niya is Ken Koy, because they call ang caricature kay Osmeña, because yung siya, babalo siya. Kasi babalo played him, as Ken Koy. And then parang lagi niyang karancho itong si Akong. But anyway, that was about it. Wala namang masyadong. And then in 74, I always mention this because it was the first time that there was a Chinese character on cinema, in a big way. And this was sa Bukod ng Liwanag, by Lino Roca, and it's based on the book of Laurel, and of course also you've seen the movie, si Ate. It was an actual actor who, and I'm not sure, I haven't been in that area for a long time, but Bombero dati yan, very shot. It was the fire station, and so it was a bit of a shock, of course, to see that ending, that climax. It was really slaughtered. And so, I guess after that, although a bit later, lumabas naman yung kay Eddie Romero, yung Panginoon, where ang actor doon si Ching Tong Chan, who was a martial artist. And he played this hero, in a sense. He saves Colas. So I decided then, I was adolescent, that siguro this cannot be, you have to do something if I wanted to be a writer. And that was great, I guess, more representations. Because there's people that to figure out. In fact, last time I think it was Candela Cruz was suggesting, oh, why don't you write a new version of, sa kubo ng liwanag si ate ka po magkukwento. Parang yung Huckleberry Finn, diba someone did? I think yung Huckleberry Finn with Jane as the point of view ng Big Jim, I think. So that was it, when I started writing. But truly, I think lately, ang napansin ko naman is a lot of the ground has in a way been covered. Now you have, so from Kubo ng Liwanag, you now have Manopo, Manopo, which is the franchise, which is, sort of, it's a popular media now. So you have Eddie Garcia and Susan Rosen speaking Hokkien, although Susan actually speaks Hokkien. So yeah, much of the ground has been covered. It's no longer that alienated. Although of course you can still do more. But of late again, there's a new dynamic because of the new, since the arrival of the new commerce from the mainland, they started coming back in the 80s. And now they're here in a big way. No longer as labor, but as capitalists and all sorts. So I thought if you're going to write about it, that's the new ground. The new back of dynamic. Especially the situation in China has changed also. So you're no longer writing about the minority discourse, but a powerful voice almost. That's suspect. And that's why I wrote Aratsan. I thought if you're going to write about it, then maybe this is a new area. These new characters, this new dynamic between. The problematic is between the newcomers and the community, who I think in most cases do not like the newcomers, but they resent them, or sometimes they're different sort of people. And then you have the general population, and then you have the geopolitics around. So again, I wrote that book. I thought maybe this is the new dynamic that's happening, and what we're going to deal with. So I hope it does something. It at least starts some conversation. And of course, not just the Philippines. It's a Southeast Asia situation also. So I guess this.
I'll read that. I'll use the podium to have some authority. I'm a little embarrassed because I was very proud to draw Charlie Varick into my kids by saying, all schools have invited me. Finally, I get invited at the Ateneo, my alma mater. And then my son, one of my kids said, he pointed out, I really did not know. Dad, the family name is there. You're a sponsor. I think they're being polite. But anyway, we'll take it as it is. And we're still very thankful to to be here. Approached rather differently. We just talked in Xavier a few months ago. I brought all the books I have of Charlson, which is complete, big 7 books. I will be reading from a very thin book that's 18 years old. I'll tell you something about it. I'll read 3 paragraphs. I timed myself this morning. It's 16 minutes, so if you're Ken Garrett, at least I gave you the time. It will be around that time. Okay? This is just 3 paragraphs. It's called The Math Wizard. This is written maybe 20 years ago. Unlike grandfather, who bribed his way to stay in the Philippines, Tommy was trying to get out of the country. Tommy studied hard, for he didn't just want a job, he wanted a job in Hong Kong. Tommy shunned math and was one of the few students who really excelled in Mandarin. They were the 2 subjects where he gave his all because he believed they would ensure him a place in the world. He was so good in math that sometimes he would accompany me to grocery and add up everything I bought, way ahead of the woman who needed the cash register. Tommy's full name was Thomas Jefferson Gould. There was nothing really special about his name, at least we thought it natural enough, until we noticed Filipino teachers at school would snicker when they first told the roll. A parent got to know about a teacher who giggled as she read her son's name, Paul Newman Chan, and the mother went straight to the principal to complain. After that, her son wanted his name changed, but he was stuck with it. Many of us were named after some famous figure in America, and if one's mother was a devotee of Hollywood movies, one would probably be registered at City Hall with a name like John Wayne Sia or Marilyn Monroe Lee. The birth certificate at City Hall demanded the name in Roman letters, and what came to father's mind was Frank, after Frank Sinatra. So what I'll do now is just show you how it evolved, how I couldn't continue finishing the book, how I eventually finished it. I just tell you something about that. Significantly, what Charlson was saying, Mang Akong, which is a Filipino who was playing a role of the Chinese. I wrote a documentary and included it there. And one of the sponsors was Jose Marichan, who's now known as Mr. Christmas. He called me in their hotel. They owned Hyatt before. They're a very big sugar baron family. He told me I cannot accept that this man would appear in this documentary because he misrepresents the Chinese all the time. Jose Marichan is Christmas. Every time I hear his voice, I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? So, it's a different world. But I'll tell you about how this book evolved. Embarrassingly very good. Around 1995, when I came to try out teaching at the Ateneo College, I had my seatmate, somebody from Xavier School, the late Clinton Palangka, as my seatmate. And I think Gab Lim was also here, exploring scholarship on how to teach the English language to the world. Both were already publishing fiction far from the Chinoy experience. They were publishing very cosmopolitan stories, science fiction, horror, what is now known as speculative fiction. They were beginning it. And I was thinking to myself, I still have to finish this book. Who's going to be interested in it? I thought it would be irrelevant for me to continue and finish this story. This was 1995. And of course, in 2008, I finally got to finish the book. I finally, at that time, got the Chinoy Museum in Intramuros to convince them to publish the book. And from the feedback, the reviews, and even the public, even the snail mail from the public, it was rather gratifying that some people found that there's something in the book that spoke to them. In fact, a small victory is the book has already been sold 4,000 copies, which by the Philippines' very low standards is quite a feat. Of course, this is nowhere near the book of Margie Single Holmes, which is a sex advice book, which is sold over, I think, nearly 2 million copies. Or Jessica Zafra, certainly big numbers, but maybe not a million per book. Sometime in the 2000s, if maybe none of you will remember, but the older people will remember, the Taiwanese group F4 came to the Philippines, and they were literally mobbed by women, Filipinos, in the airport. And my eldest uncle, whose son is very popular now, is the Secretary of Agriculture, who told us yesterday, who said, "Salty ko." He's the one, etc. But anyway, he said in front of the TV, talking to the TV, he said, "Guwapo na ba ang mga inchik sa Pilipinas? Noon kami ang pinakapangit lagi sa party, sa college, sa barkada. Kami ang pinakapangit." You had to repeat that. So in 2011, having published another book, which made me think I had no future in academia, I embarked on founding a healthcare company. And at that time, the Pinoy administration was just starting. And one of my first clients that I visited, I never successfully sold him, was Dr. Ateneo, who said, "Paano naman kami bibili sa inyo kaaway ng presidente namin ng China? Because I look Chinese and our company had a name that sounded Chinese." So over that 10 years, from that F4 to this Pinoy administration fighting China, there was another shift that was happening. In fact, I have a very good friend. There's a literary anecdote to that later on, who in his Facebook posted that he was so happy because a Chinese restaurant refused to give him a receipt, that he just didn't pay. He just gave the waiter 100 peso tip and very righteously walked away. And his point is that these Chinese don't even want to pay taxes, they just want to. But he doesn't know when you set up a business in the Philippines, you have to bribe the BIR to produce receipts. Our company, when we sold goods, we couldn't produce a receipt for 6 months. I had to personally triple the bribe to get the receipts because you're going to be issued right to print receipt. My daughter is here. Anyway, that distracted me. But anyway, the right to produce a receipt, and they will assign you to their printing press where they want you to print the receipt. So it takes a long time to produce the receipt. So I could just imagine the fear of this Chinese woman, opens a small carinderia and cannot produce a receipt, and she's being accused of exploiting this country. And I felt very bad. But I really didn't say anything anymore because kaibigan eh. And then my other friends started congratulating him for the good work that he has done. Anyway, I finally broke with his friend because eventually the last line that I always get from him after we meet is, "Ano mo kasi kayong mga incheck?" Eventually, medyo sensitive ito, but eventually, he was the lawyer who sued Adam David. And I signed, I don't know Adam David, but I supported Adam David. And Adam David came out with a blog acknowledging me. So, it's all these complexities of a small world. But I just say that because I just want to share with you the shift from what Charlson and I were growing up with the F4, to these Chinoys like Clinton, like Gatlin. They were becoming global citizens. They were very cosmopolitan. They did not care about these issues anymore. So, if I had the chance to meet Alice Guo, I don't know her. If I have a chance to meet Alice Guo, I'd probably give her a collection of short stories, maybe a novel by Charlson. You know why? Because she also has a story to say. People are making her appear that she's a criminal and so on and so forth. Gatchalian talks to her about Senator Gatchalian uses her to get the headlines. But Gatchalian's dad bought his papers and then bribed his way to get the citizenship. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying is citizenship is one of the great fictions. So if I had the chance, I'd probably give him a Charlson book, the best Filipino short stories, etc. So, and this Alice goal was very hot. Another friend said, you know what she should do? She should apply legally to become a Filipino. Because my father sponsored a Chinese to become a Filipino, and he didn't legally. And then I said, and I knew what the answer would be. I asked, when did your father sponsor this person to become Filipino? And he said, 1970s. And I'll tell you, the old Chinese like my father, they love Marcos. Because instead of persecuting them, they were given citizenship, which started the journey of the Chinoy, which produced the Taiwanese that give J.G. Song, Yung, Laurel. Anyway, for many empire builders, for sure, the Botianos or Ramon Ang or SFC, I don't have no doubt that they trace their roots to 3 or 4 generations where they bought papers, fake papers, wanted to seek shelter from these papers. Because like my grandfather, they wanted to seek shelter from poverty, my grandfather from famine, a brutal colonial occupation in China, illiteracy. My grandfather literally cannot read or write, he learned it himself. So, for me, the greatest fiction is Asian and nationalism. And I was telling Charlie when we were having a nice meal, the first time I met him, I was so charmed, I ran out of money in the bank. But anyway, to build a nation is to need an elite, I told Charlie. And who is the elite? Not control. These are the people who are the elite. So the kind of questions of Charlie is really basically saying, what is the power of fiction? What is the power of short stories? What's the power of Ongpin stories? Probably not. But here in this forum, I hope I'm allowed to talk about the most powerful of all fictions, the most dangerous of all fiction, the fictions of nation and nationalism. You know, I tell you this is a true story, and some of you may not believe it. I traveled, half jokingly, this year to the modern Rome, which is called New York City. I was walking in Times Square and I got punched in the face because I looked Chinese. Because Trump on TV said that the Chinese are raping us in our own country. And that fiction is so powerful that this guy saw me. He couldn't stand me. He punched me. I fell. I fell on the ground. I fell on the ground with urine on the ground. And I was telling myself, Jesus Christ, what did I do to be punched? But you know, I mean, you also analyze this guy who punched you. He's the scrap heap of capitalism and so on and so forth. So you analyze it that way as you rub your face. So anyway, I just bought a ticket for David Mamet's play. 1 minute I was outside the exit and then I got punched. So I went back and got a refund. Days later I was in Houston to attend the wedding. That's why we were there. My wife kept insisting we should go. I didn't want to go to Trump's US. And then white teenagers heckled me because I look Chinese. But I was so tired at that time already, I gave them the most universal language ever. I gave them a dirty finger. But the car was full, they made a U-turn to go after me. I have to announce to you, I can still run a marathon. So the good news is I can run fast, and I have to say these are black kids to qualify, because when I was punched, everybody in my friend's house was in black. And unfortunately, it was a black man. What really is the crime of Alice Gore? Hundreds, you know, for her, when her constituents were interviewed, many of them loved her. There are many questions our parents may be told. I met people in Norman Fascia who were trying to sell me their units at 50% discount. You'd think this guy was working in Microsoft in terms of accent and education, but he carries a Chinese passport. I said, well, then why are you in a hurry to exit the Philippines? He says, this is dangerous to be Chinese in the Philippines right now. And, you know, I mean, people who are trying to sell condos to that area, easily 2 dozen. They're all just dropping their prices. They're so scared. Of course, some of them are criminals, but some of them are not. Las Vegas was formed by criminals. So, to end it, my grandfather, Kim Shen-po, told me when I was a child, we should side with Mao in China because we are from the poor. And without Mao's revolution, China will still be poor. And that made me wonder if that is why 4 of his 7 sons ended up in prison. One for helping smuggling armaments in the Philippines. According to Amnesty International, one of the worst torture victims under Rodolfo Aguinaldo, the most notorious torturer in the AFP, aligning himself with the communist movement. Another was arrested for no reason except the involvement that he found out the car being parked at my grandfather's house was the car of Joma. So he cut it up and buried it underground. It was caught. So he was also just thrown in prison. I have another uncle who almost lost an eye. He climbed the US Embassy walls. He got hit in the truncheon and ended up also in prison. And he had one poem published in the Asia Philippines Leader because of his incarceration. Does that invalidate us? Invalidate their efforts? Because we're not real Filipinos? Although one of my uncles is now called a makapili for citing that Libya is incorrect in having missiles in the Philippines right now. I will not argue. When Dean Jonathan Chua said that maybe the good first lecturer for the Kwan Laurel talks was Dr. Felicidad Prudente Santa Maria, I requested if it's possible somewhat more international. As I said, Dr. Prudente will only talk about nationalism, and I'm hoping for more international exchange. Thankfully, Jonathan got engaged with Crystal, even if only online, it was very successful. And true enough, and of course we welcome all views, when Dr. Prudente Santa Maria gave a talk at the Contacts and Continuities last year here at the Ateneo, where she talked about the gifts of American colonialism like refrigeration for food. She mentioned that somehow at that time, the Chinese or Chinese Filipinos or Filipino Chinese should be sorry na lang as we try to form a nation. I could not resist standing up because the time this became policy, na sorry na lang dahil in Chika. During the Garcia administration and Magsaysay era, people committed suicide, went into crime, because they couldn't become doctors, they couldn't become accountants, their stores were closed because they were Chinese. They were not allowed to have a livelihood. So now I meet Chinese Chinois who left of that era because they couldn't earn a living here. And so if you ask the power of fiction, well, with Ongpin stories I try to tackle one of the most powerful and dangerous fictions, and it's hold on the national imagination, which is nation and nationalism. Salamat po.
I'll just read from my collection. This is the title story of that other country we now speak. Of that other country we now speak. Land of yellow earth and blue sky, where a golden emperor once ruled. My grandmother lived in that land. In the mornings, she bathed in the river, where a green dragon once played. Where a sad poet drowned, reaching for the moon one night. But my grandmother had stolen the moon. She had scooped the moon into her wooden ball and hidden it inside an earthen jar, where it remains to this day. It is the curse of the poor poet that has plagued our family ever since. It has followed us across many rivers and oceans. My grandmother left the moon back in the old country. For 10 years, the moon rested inside her earthen jar and grew heavy. For 10 years, the night sky over her village remained moonless. When the time came for her to give the moon back to the river, so that the moon shadow could once more be seen over the sky, the soldiers arrived. She said they were looking for the green dragon that played in the old river. For it is said, the one who rides the green dragon shall rule over the land of 10,000 sorrows. But the absence of moonlight saddened the soldiers that night. They could not remember the faces of their mothers, wives, and children. Their sadness turned to anger. And they drove the villagers out of their homes. Before she fled, my grandmother took her jar to the family crypt and buried it beside her grandmother. She promised to return for it, but her family placed her on a boat which sailed farther away. That is the tale she told me as a child. That is the story I remember. Thank you.
Generous sharing, Dr. Ong and Dr. Kwan Laurel. So here to give his response to both talks is Dr. Mark Lim. Dr. Lim is the director of ILAP, and recently he published the article, Dayuhan sa Sariling Bayan, Dinadayuhan ang Sarili sa Bayan. Ilang panukalang pagtanaw at pagsusuri sa suliraning Chino Filipino sa pamamagitan ng kritikal na pagbasa sa pelikulang Manupo at sa mga sanaysay sa Egypt. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Lim.
Super kinakabahan ako kasi ang feeling ko ngayon this is English. Standing on the shoulders of giants. Si Sir Charlson at si Sir Robby, parang dahil silang pagdating sa formative years ko, sila yung dalawa sa mga pangalan na nung sinisimulan ko pa yung mga research ko at kwento ko, sila yung parang lagi kong pinaka-naiisip na hanapin. Si Sir Charlson, nung sinisimulan ko yung mga kwento ko, binasa ko yung banyaga. And then sabi ko, actually ngayon gusto ko ng inis ko ng biyayto ay mas malapit sa gusto kong genre or sa gusto kong mga kwento like crime, ganyan. Gusto ko gawin yung detective crime fiction, tapos yung chinoy yung bida. Tapos bigla lumabas yung susunod na nobela ni Sir Charlson. Sabi ko, wala na. Tapos sabi ko, gusto ko naman, ganun pa yung try, gawin ko mahiwaga. Isa na namang gabi. Kasi Charlson, ay biglang may ka na, oh no. Okay. Pero, hindi naman siya naka-stifle ng creation. Nakaka-inspire nga sa paggawa din ng mga susunod kong kwento. Si Sir Robby naman, hindi may libro siya na kung baga sa group of friends ko, nandun na siya sa parang cult status, yung Philippine cultural disasters. At nung bago yung nag-publish yung libro, ang bilis na nawala. Tapos, hinahanap ko sa live, wala yung copy yung live. Tapos, nagtatanong din ako sa mga tao, meron ba kayong Philippine cultural disasters? Meron ba kayong Philippine cultural disasters? Halos walang sumagot na meron. At bakit ko siya hinahanap? Kasi parang si Sir Robby lang yata ang tanging nakapagsulat na
Minura ng lahat.
tanging kumbaga na-challenge sa mga assumptions ni Carmen Howe. And then sabi ko, oh my God, anong sinabi niya doon? Anong sinabi niya? Bukod syempre sa parang pagiging chismoso in niya, ano ba yung sinabi? Of course, ay kumbaga, pag pupunta ka sa Chinese-Filipino studies, isa sa mga lagi mong pupuntahan ay si Carmen Howe. And kung ano man yung halos kasi dahil siya lang yung parang medyo intense na nakapag-aral or na-publish, parang siya lang yung babalikan mo with regards to Chinese Chinoyness pagdating sa literature, pagdating sa movies. So, and then there's Richard Chu din. So parang dalawa lang. And then, gusto ko syempre makakita nung counter-arguments with regards to that. And halos wala, besides the Philippine cultural disasters. Thankfully, this year, may nagsabi na meron siyang kopya. At nahiwag ko. And then, unfortunately, habang binabasa ko, may nakaalam. Uy! May kopya ka na. Oo. Pahiwag naman. Okay. So, hindi ko pa natapos yung Philippine cultural disasters. Pero, yes, very happy. So, parang anecdotes lang ito. But then, ang point ko din ay, with regards to yung sa mga ginawa ni Sir Charlson and Sir Robby throughout the years, I think, tulad din nung sinasabing sa conversation nila, ay may power ang fiction, may power ang stories, may power yung ginawa, or kahit mismo yung lore nga na nabuo doon sa libro, yung tanging libro na nakapaghamon kay Carol Howe. I think the point is, hindi ko makikilala din yung sarili ko as a Chinese Filipino kung wala yung mga yun. And very much so that everything, sila yung sa paniniwala ko, and everything with regards to our notions of our Chinese-ness or Filipino-ness is actually powered by fictions. Just like what Sir Robby said, that our notion of nation, our notion of nation, our notion of being Filipino is actually this big fiction. Pero pag sinasabi ko natin, ay, fiction na lang lahat. Pag iniisip natin na, hala, peke-peke lang ang lahat. I don't think that is it. I think that when we realize that our identities ay nakasalalay sa fiction, that makes it more powerful. Because that gives us agency. That gives us this power to find ourselves in these fictions and then create our own fictions. Isa sa mga naalala ko na kwento yung lolo ko. Yung lolo ko, siya yung first gen, siya yung galing sa China. Nagpagko and everything, mga ganong kwento. And then, sa pasay silang mga kumbaga friends na pumunta. And then, sa kwento ng nanay ko, gumawa daw sila ng parang group. Tapos, may pangalan daw yung group nila. Na in English, ang pangalan ng group ay itong mga Chinese Filipino sa Pasay. Na nagtayo ng mga negosyo, ng mga tindahan, ng mga ano bang binibenta nila. Anyway, mga negosyo. So, nagtayo sila ng mga negosyo. Tawag niya sa sarili, 21 brothers. And then ako, 21 brothers? Sabi ko, my God! Biglang pumiskal yung imagination ko ng 21 brothers. Sabi ko, parang silang bahayan. Parang gano'n. Hong Kong tayo din, parang naglalakad sila sa Pasay. Naglalakad sila sa Pasay. 21 sila, tapos sa isang kalsada sa may Libertad. Maglalakad sila. And then, parang mga naka-coat and tie sila or something, mga naka-kitora. And then, oh my God, 21 brothers. Of course, dahil doon, na-create yung fiction ko, naging, siyempre bata pa lang ako, naging cool yung lolo ko. Because of this notion na may, yung lolo ko ay parte ng isang organization na posible na sila ang mga pwedeng gumawa ka ng fiction na parang Godfather, Pasay Edition, ganyan. Parang Don Lim or whatever. So that, totoo ba yun? Siyempre hindi. Hindi naman totoo na may binuo silang parang organizational crime dun sa Pasay. But then of course, dahil cool nga ang Godfather, cool nga ang Mafia, I created this fiction in meaning na parang lalong kahit na hindi totoo, lalo ko siyang ini-imagine and imagine it as something na kumbaga, paano ba? Something na masaya akong isipin pagdating sa lolo ko, kahit na fiction siya. And dahil doon, I found him more endearing as a, I guess, ano ba tawag ko sa kanya? Wapo. So, yun. I think, hanggang doon na lang siguro muna. Hanggang doon na lang.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. So the floor is now open for questions and comments from the audience. There's a mic at the back as well.
So, my first question is, ano yung pinagkaiba ng Yoren kay Caroline Howe? Sa librong nag-kontra kay Caroline Howe?
Ongpin story stuff. Sa video. Beer muna, beer. You know, these people are produced by Cornell and they're produced by Ben Anderson. Ben Anderson made nationalism palatable. That's why the elite loves him. And for me, it's I consider Sarah still as a friend. She's a teacher who's also influenced Charlie Eric a lot, Citadel. I think the fight was provoking, and away kami eventually. And I was forced to produce the book because well, kwentuhan na lang naman ito but she wrote me something that parang as a scholar, if I don't bring this out, kalalaki na, parang gano'n eh. So, but that's my view, that's my view of them being cosmopolitan, being gatekeepers. I believe that they made nationalism palatable, and you can have a whole conversation about nationalism, the state, and so on and so forth. But that's a big difference, I think. I think because my grandfather, rightly or wrongly, identified with the poor, had an identity that was class-based. We have a large part of the family who thinks that way. nationalism is very pervasive. One very great man, for example, was to me what I was really taken aback. Father Neveres was interviewed recently. He said, Father de la Costa asked him at one time, will you choose the Catholic Church or will you choose the Filipino nation? And he said, I will choose the Filipino nation. That took me. That was a big blow to me. For me, one of the great identities is the Catholic faith. And it's a universal thing. It makes me identify with somebody who punched me. I try to understand him. I could just say, oh, this blank or whatever. But I didn't. It took me, after the shock, I understood that he was a discard and he was hitting back. What their leader is saying is one of the representatives of the people raping them. Did I answer?
Yes, sir. You keep looking.
Ongpin stories, Charlson Ongpin, second novels, great writer, and Alice Go will get a set.
Where is she anyway?
I'd like to know, like, for both of you, when did the generation of like new migrants begin? Is it in the 70s, 80s, or where do you position the old Pacquiao and the new guest?
As far as I know, mga 80s yan eh. They started coming back. Of course, when China opened up. And then, mga 80s, more or less, I think then we started hearing about these people who were, at first they were really also very poor folk, no? Who were being sent somewhere, parang nagbabantay ng baboy somewhere. Yeah, they were. And then you started seeing a lot of them sa sidewalks selling stuff, you know, even up to Baguio. And actually, galit sa kanila yung mga store owners because they were occupying, you know. So it took, I think it's been many decades and it began to transform, and then later on we get the high rollers, and of course it part na rin dun sa change that was going on in the mainland. In the 80s, I remember, you could go to China, you could go to Shenzhen, by bringing goods. You can bring denims, bicicleta, and then they will pay for your trip. Because at that time there was only free port was Shenzhen. So you go there and you tell them it's all fixed anyway, they know. And then you declare that you have relatives and then they let you in. Kasi may dala kang and this is for my relatives. So that was 80 siguro. So they would pay, mga merchants would pay for your trip. Just so you can bring in goods. And imagine now. So that was just not too long ago. So ito na mga period. So the change has been so fast in terms of history.
Where did you go for high school?
Palawan ko Christian school po.
I went to grade school of Christian in the Philippines, so we're practically brothers. But he's correct. In the 1990s, the term PDK came out. It's a derogatory term, which is this type of it's a look down of the Chinese Filipinos on the people who just came. And there was several ways. In fact, Inquirer has already closed at least its print edition and so forth. During not now, but until recently, of course, the territory was identified to be very kind to China. The Chinese newspaper circulation was actually phenomenally growing. But the exit now is really also quite rapid. I think Yeah, so I really don't understand it. You know, when Pogo came, you know, my friends in Paranaque, Makati, Pasay, they cannot get a driver. The drivers were being paid by Pogos like 80,000 to 100,000 a month. It was really occupying all the condos. So I'm not sure why this declaration of all Pogos are bad. So these are all economics, geopolitical, and so on and so forth. What's your course?
Literature.
Just literature or double major? Or?
Double major.
In what?
Political science was my first degree.
Are you going to law?
Apo.
For me, I was, I don't know, I say a PLUME book, 112 pages, 7 books. I worked in the bank, I worked in the bank, I was the youngest manager in its entire history. And of course, obviously when I retired, I gave my retirement to Ateneo, 100% actually. But I'll just tell you, humanities really helped me a lot. It helped me navigate the corporate life. It helped me grow, it helped us found the company grow. It helped us be detached that we can walk away from the money and the reading, etc., etc. It's a good course, it's a fantastic course. I wish I could sell it to more undergrads like you and say, don't go to Rockwell. Oh, in my generation, another very popular Chinoy teacher was Polgo. He was a writer, graduated University of Iowa, but left for Taiwan and became a translator. Yeah, right.
In your works, you serve as the lens for your parents and grandparents and their experiences. When trying to express those experiences in the works, what is your process in trying to perhaps choose which parts remain and which parts are left out?
When my first book came out, The Men of the East, of course this was the first book. I was young. I was very excited to show it to my mother. I wanted her to read it. And read it. And then I comment, and said something, well, I didn't think that your childhood was that sad. So I realized then, never make your family read. If they want to, they can do it, but never make them. Because they will always see themselves in the work. It's human nature. It's fiction. But then, you know, that's assassination. I think the idea of fiction is tayo-tayo because if you write fiction, you think it's fiction. But to other people, it's real, no? Or there's really no distinction. If you're not a literature person or a reader, fact and fiction, so everything is the same. So they always see themselves in what you write. So let it go. Let it go. Yeah. So I don't think it can be helped. You see what you see, and you write what you write.
Sorry to ask, what's your course? Sorry, no, just joking. Yeah, and sorry, just for, are you writing or are you enrolled to?
I'm just interested.
Who's your favorite writer?
I've only really...
Robby, Kwan? No, seriously.
I'm more into adult
Oh.
literature, so I'm really a big fan of the Harry Potter series. Because it's the good books that my mom gave to me as a child.
Okay. You know, when I was in high school, I visited Alfredo Navarro Salanga. He gave me a book by Paul Stephen Lim. I've never heard of him. It's a lousy looking book for a new day. It's on Chinoy experience. It comes from St. Stephen's. When I read it, it's like there was an earthquake. I mean, how could literature be this powerful? Eventually he migrated. I think gay identity became a bigger part of his identity. But, I mean, I'm glad you're here, I'm glad you're reading, but wow, there's just a world out there to read. You know, I mean, my daughter laughs at me. I get Amazon boxes and book sale. And she says, nobody's buying books anymore. But, you know, I've experienced buying books where up to now, that it changes my view, it changes my life, always for the better. So read. And that's how you will find your way through if you want to write, and you will get an impulse for it. And you will get it. But I'm glad you're here. I mean, if you're an engineer and then you read the humanities, you take a few electives from this course, from this department, don't take too many theory classes. Yeah, but yeah. Have you read the Filipino writer?
Yeah, I'll make one.
Which one?
Maybe
Oh, lousy.
generation, that's really
Filipino. No, it's a short story. Okay. Well, I think networking has been more criticized now. It's different. Who would you advise him to read? Engineer? What kind of engineer are you? Electronics. This guy's going to be rich, man. But better. No, advise a book. Advise a book. Charlie, who's a great Filipino science fiction writer? I heard young people are into it now. Throw a name. Greg Brillantes is not a science fiction writer, although he's a great writer. Yeah, Distance to Andromeda is a great short story by Greg Brillantes. Kurt Vonnegut, maybe short story, If You're Crying. Oh, go, Charlson. 2 daughters, 1 Filipino, 1 American. Or are you engineer? No? Which the reason?
Well, sci-fi, the last sci-fi book by Joel Salud, Specimen Zero. So you might want to look at that.
It's good?
I don't know. I have enough.
Very good. Okay. Maraming salamat. I hope we answered it. You have to read to find out the way you would determine how you would do. I guess you're planning to write fiction. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yes.